Hi, I'm Rob Lynn, one of the two co-founders of Consult from Strength, along with my partner, Rich Taviano. Welcome to beautiful San Clemente, California. And what you're going to be seeing soon is a video about how to establish yourself in a really dominant niche as a consultant. And it's one piece of Consult from Strength's program, and it's a program of education and coaching for consultants and people who aspire to be consultants. It's a whole array of things, and as time progresses, you'll have exposure to all of those and an opportunity to plug in at any point along the continuum to expand yourself and grow and increase your success as a consultant, whether you've been at it for a long, long time, like Rich and I have, for 25 years now for me, and about 15 for Rich. He comes out of the corporate world, and I've been a consultant practically my entire adult life. Or if you're just starting out, just thinking about what it might be like to be an independent consultant. We're there to help guide you along that path. So welcome to the video on developing your niche as a consultant, and we look forward to interacting with you more as you continue to engage with us and we engage with you to help you on your journey and maximize your success. Thanks again, and enjoy the video. Hi, welcome to Consult from Strength's video, how to develop a consulting niche you can dominate. The facts are, there are lots of factors that are going to come into play to determine ultimately how successful you are as a consultant. But in this video, we're going to focus on that really crucial question that the best consultants have a great answer to: how to develop a niche that you can absolutely dominate. And by dominate, we don't mean just be good at. We mean make the competition play catch up all the time. You'll be the paramount player in this particular niche for you. It doesn't matter if you're just starting out as a consultant, you've been at this a long time. Thinking deeply about this question will really help you. And the best consultants have thought deeply about it. And they have an answer that's absolutely perfect for them. But I want to emphasize something. There are no universal answers for this. We're going to take you through a process to find the answer that's absolutely best for you. And that'll become a key to tremendous success for you as a consultant.
So your answer is going to come from defining your particular area of focus. We're going to challenge you to think differently about it. We're going to challenge you to think deeply. We're going to challenge you to be very introspective. We want you to go beyond just those usual titles of I'm an OD consultant, or I'm a leadership consultant, or a marketing consultant. We want it to be personalized. We want it to be unique. We want you to find those unique applications of your skill and experience that set you apart from the crowd. In the end, clients are going to buy you. They're not going to buy your process. They're not going to buy your tools. They will buy your process and tools because of you. So keep an open mind. Be ready to learn. Be open to new ideas. Be open to new possibilities. Be open to reinvention. We think reinvention is a really important part. And then we want you to be open to new learning over and over and over again. We think reinvention actually becomes part of your new security blanket. The security that today large companies no longer provide, and maybe some large companies you've been involved with have stopped providing you the security you thought you had. Well, as a consultant, you'll have complete freedom to create that security for yourself. You'll have the opportunity to never be obsolete if you define the niche based on your unique application of skill and experience. So come along with us. We're going to share our stories, and we're going to be giving you 8 lessons that you can use to develop your niche.
So let me tell you about my progression from the most narrow of niches you could possibly imagine, employee benefits consulting, to the most broad niche of general management consulting, helping senior executives solve their toughest problems. And I want to emphasize that point before I get started with the stories. And that's about the fact where you start doesn't matter, because where you start is not going to be where you end up. We're going to be helping you understand and develop the techniques to expand yourself across multiple niches, however you want to progress yourself. So just be comfortable with that. Start where you feel like starting. We'll help you get there. But what really matters is how you evolve yourself over time. So I want to tell you about that. My first job was with a very large insurance company right out of college as a financial underwriter for large insurance plans, large employee benefit plans. And my job was to do the financial analysis of these plans, come up with a pricing strategy, and then you go into negotiations with the benefit consulting firms that represent large employers. And quite frankly, you could not be more bottom of the barrel. This was bottom of the totem pole kind of job, right? And my boss was a guy named Steve. And flat out, Steve was a genius, mathematically as sharp as I've ever come across. But he made people crazy, because what Steve would do is you bring an analysis back to him, a really good analysis. And every time, he would send you back with 4 different ways you could do it, and he'd want you to come back with 4 or 5 different ways to run the analysis, and you'd go back and forth that way. And it made people nuts. But what I recognized, though, is I wanted to become an employee benefits consultant. I thought that would be a really neat job. So what I figured is, as painful as it was to work with Steve, hours and hours and hours of repeated work, what I figured I was doing was learning how to compete against my future competition, underwriters like me, on behalf of my large employer clients. And I worked for Steve for almost 2 years, and then I left there to become a benefits consultant in Mercer, a very large human resources consulting company. And in the 7 years that I focused on that niche, employee benefits consulting, not one time did I lose a negotiation with the underwriters. And I'm no mathematician by any stretch of the imagination, but I learned from Steve. It was painful, but I learned from Steve. And what was neat about that is it gave me tremendous credibility with my clients, which allowed me to then expand to other niches over time. But that story of that very difficult time with Steve leads to niche development lesson number 1, which is look at your experiences, even the seemingly bad ones, with an eye for the expertise that can help a client solve a problem. And I did that, and it got me thinking about what other problems can I solve for my clients. So all of my clients were spending a tremendous amount of money, sometimes with Mercer, my firm, and oftentimes with other firms, on employee communications consulting, communicating their benefit programs to their employees. And we had those professionals in my firm, those communication professionals, and I thought there's an opportunity for me to partner up with them to do that kind of work for my clients and raise my consulting to a different area and to a different level. And it's particularly good work because at the communication level, the employee communication level, is you're interacting with CEOs and other senior executives who are particularly concerned about making sure the employees recognize the value and all the money being spent in those benefit programs. So I partnered up with the communication professionals at Mercer, and we went to each of my clients and sold our employee communication consulting services to them, and I got involved in each of those projects. And that led to my next niche, which was employee communications consulting. And it was particularly important because, again, as I mentioned a moment ago, is I'm now interacting not just with benefit managers or vice presidents of human resources, but now I'm interacting with CEOs and CFOs and chief operating officers and people like that, and it began to change my view into a business and begin to evolve myself as a consultant. And that leads to niche development lesson number 2. For ways to leverage your expertise to have an impact on a broader range of your client's business. And that's an important point about how to go from where you start to some bigger place that you're shooting for, is look for ways to leverage yourself to solve those tougher and tougher and broader problems. Let me repeat that again. Keep looking for ways to leverage your expertise to have an impact on a broader range of your client's business. Now this second niche, which is still pretty narrow, employee benefits consulting and now employee benefits communications, led to my first breakthrough towards general management consulting. So I mentioned to you that myself and some of my communication partners, we sold this employee communication work to every one of my benefit clients. And one of those clients called one day and said, I really liked the work that you guys have been doing for us. And my CEO just came to me and said, we've just acquired our biggest competitor. We've been fighting for 10 years, and now we just bought them, and we have to integrate that merger. Do you guys do that work? Now, I got lucky. Better to be lucky than good, right? A month before, my answer would have had to have been, no, we don't do that work. But we had 2 guys now in San Francisco that had just come to our firm that had a deep expertise in merger integration. So I didn't know him, I never met him, but I called him up. His name was Mark, and I said, Mark, here's the story, and I described what the deal was, and I said, I can have a meeting with the CEO tomorrow if you can get down here and help me sell this thing. And thankfully, he wasn't too busy. He just started with the firm, and he hopped on a plane that evening, and down he went. We met with the CEO, and we got that assignment. And what was interesting is that there's a lot of employee benefits work in merger integration. So I had a reason to stick around the assignment, and Mark was a really good guy, and he'd let me follow him around throughout the entire project. And I began to learn through that project a lot of things about merger integration. Things like business planning, operational problem solving, prioritization, organizational design, things like that, that led to me beginning to develop 2 more areas of expertise. General merger integration work, as well as very focused business problem solving. And so that project began to really get me towards the general management side of things. And that leads to really 2 more lessons that are really critical, I think, as you progress yourself from one niche to other niches. So lesson number 3 is look to combine multiple areas of expertise together to solve related, multifaceted problems for your client. And that's what I was doing with Mark, looking at that whole business to deal with that merger integration. And then lesson number 4, which is, and this is a really important one, is reach out to people who have expertise that you want to acquire. Keep learning. So I'm going to repeat those 2 again because I think they're really critical to really drill home. Number 3 is look to combine multiple areas of expertise together to solve related, multifaceted problems for your client. And lesson number 4, reach out to people who have expertise that you want to acquire with an emphasis on keep learning. Now with this first merger integration project under my belt, I was able to sell several more and really begin to build some expertise there. But that led to my next niche, because what would happen is I would start to get frustrated that most merger integration efforts, they failed. I was thinking, wow, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with this process? And I began to look into the reasons that most mergers fail, and the stats are frightening. 80% of mergers fail in some way, shape, or form within 2 or 3 years of the acquisition. And I began to look at why that would be. And what's interesting about merger work is executives have to be really good at setting priorities and then fully integrating, or executing those priorities. And it takes really good leadership to do that. As I began to reflect on the mergers that I had been involved in, and which ones worked and which ones didn't, the common thread of success or failure was leadership. And the facts were, as I saw them, is that most leaders weren't very good. So I thought, well, there's an opportunity to solve a really tough business problem, which is the problem of leadership. And I didn't want to do that in the common way. We had lots of people in our firm, organizational development PhDs and those kinds of people that did some form of leadership development work, but I wanted to do it in a different way. So I started to do some research on some very current stuff that a couple of guys at Harvard were doing, as well as looking at some 2,500-year-old Chinese philosophy, the Tao Te Ching, and saw common threads between those 2 philosophies. And I thought, well, there's an angle on leadership. And so I created the, I'm almost embarrassed to say it now, but the Rob Lynn Principles of Leadership. And I was pretty passionate about them. And within a short period of time, I had sold projects to several of my clients who already trusted me because of the expertise I had shown them in some other areas. But I'd sold them leadership development projects to teach their executives how to practice my leadership principles. And it was a pretty exciting time. And that leads to niche development lesson number 5, which is look for ways to solve your clients' most difficult problems. Now when you first do that, it does kind of take your breath away, because you're going from relatively safe areas to, boy, the top of the house is uncomfortable and doesn't know what to do, and you're going to step in and help them. But you can do it. So let me repeat that lesson. Look for ways to solve your clients' most difficult problems.
So, what happens next is actually the spark that leads to what's become a 10-year partnership for me and Rob, and a successful company. So Rob now sells a second leadership project. He just told you about the first one he sold. He sells a second leadership project, and this one is actually a big assignment. The client's in Hawaii, pretty good place to go work, and it's going to include 100 leaders, so it's substantial. So the firm was pretty excited that he'd sold a big deal. I've recently been hired into the company, and I come out of the corporate side, as you're going to hear over and over again. And the firm wanted me, but they weren't quite sure what to do with me. Rob was one of their most successful people, but he was off doing some unique stuff on his own. And they weren't quite sure what to do with Rob. And they had this faint idea that would be good for each other. And Rob would help me, and I would help Rob. So they tell us, they tell me, you need to go talk to Rob. And they tell Rob, you need to go talk to Rich. And probably neither one of us wanted to do it, but I was new, so I was okay with that, because I didn't know who Rob was. I'd only met him once before. But I think Rob really wasn't very excited about coming to talk to me. Things were going great for him. His career was going terrific. He had just developed his own unique theory of leadership. He had sold a couple projects, and this one was a big one that was coming up. And now they're telling him, go talk to Rich. And like, he really didn't want to go talk to this ex-corporate executive who knew nothing about consulting to see what he could do to help him. So after some pushing, it didn't happen for a while, but after some pushing by our common boss, we met. And Rob decided he would dispense with me by showing me kind of the strangest thing he had. Well, the strangest thing he had was the Rob Lynn theory of leadership that he put together from combining the Dow and Harvard Business School stuff. I mean, how many people do that? So he kind of lays it out for me, expecting me to kind of go, what is that? And instead, I go, well, that's actually pretty interesting. But then I ask the fateful question. I say, you know, it's really pretty good as far as it goes. But have you ever thought about working with the client to have them develop their own unique form of leadership that's exactly right for them, as opposed to you giving them your theory of leadership?
So Rich says this, and I'm standing at a flip chart, and my back's turned to him, and I just freeze in my tracks, and I think, wait, there's something in that. There's something in that. And so I turn around and we start talking. But what do you mean by that? And he starts to talk about experiences he had with business planning and that sort of thing with a really good consultant that taught us a lot, a guy named Tom Patterson, and how Tom would take teams through the process of really getting deep inside themselves and not looking for some outside expert to tell them what to do. And that really resonated with me. And I said, well, let's change this thing, right? And that's pretty unusual because consultants tend not to unsell projects, because we had a project sold over in Honolulu. And the next week, Rich and I were on a plane to Honolulu, meeting with that CEO, Roger, and we said, Roger, you bought something that was pretty good, but quite honestly, we've got something that's significantly better. And that led to a 15-year relationship with this organization that took us from leadership development to strategy to business problem solving to very detailed prioritization and workload capacity management. Just one of the most fantastic and lucrative client relationships that you could possibly imagine. And it happened because of open-mindedness, collaboration, willing to challenge each other, and it just put us off in a tremendously productive direction.
So the story that Rob and I have just finished gets us to development lesson number 6. Keep an open mind. Don't become so tied to your consulting approach that you're not able to see a better way. Always, always be asking yourself, is there a better way that you can meet your client's needs? One more time. Niche development lesson number 6. Keep an open mind. Well, my story is similar to Rob's, but it's also different from Rob's. I come from the corporate side. I worked for a number of large corporations and grew with them. We go way back until the late 1960s, early 1970s. Yes, I'm really that old. And I started out with RCA. It's a company some of you may not even remember, but some of you might, in a rotational program. It was billed as a high reward, high risk program. I remember the risk. I don't remember the reward. After 6 months of rotational assignments, if you didn't get a job offer, you were out of a job. So it was a sobering prospect for a recent graduate. Anyway, I did get an offer, and I went to work in their computer systems business, and my first job, therefore, out of college was in human resources. It's less important for us to go over all the places I went and the jobs I had than it is to talk about the process and approach that I took from a very early stage in my career. I got some advice from an executive who was actually dead-ended at RCA, but a really good guy. And he said, Rich, you're smart and you're one of the good ones, and you need to be careful because in this company, somebody will try to grab you and keep you and not let you move. And that's death. That's what happened to me. So my advice is move around, learn what you can, take risk, don't be afraid of change, continue to focus everything you can on learning about the business rather than unique little pieces of the business that people want you to learn. Well, that's what I did. My time at RCA over several years was characterized by volunteering to do all the stuff no one else wanted to do. I volunteered to manage the people that no one else wanted to manage. I took on whatever tasks needed to be taken on, even the picnic, which nobody wanted to do, simply because I wanted to learn everything there was to learn about the business. That's what I did. I was always looking to understand what made the business tick, what makes it fail, what makes it grow, what makes it prosper. And that leads us to lesson number 7. Lesson number 7 is seek change and take risk. Remember that fortune favors the bold, and I would add the brave, and those of us that are willing to work hard. So as we've been doing, let me say it one more time. You want to drum these lessons into your brain. Lesson number 7, seek change and don't be afraid to take some risk. Okay, more of my experience. After an interim stop, after RCA, I ended up at Xerox, where I spent 13 years. At the time I went to Xerox, it was still a monopoly. Folks, they had more money than you could believe. I was shocked after having a scarce resource environment at RCA. In my second company, I got to a place where money didn't matter. They fixed everything by throwing people and money at it in those days. Well, after just a couple of years, competition showed up. It came in the form of Kodak bringing out copiers, and it came in the form of Japan Inc. bringing out copiers. I swear to you that when that happened, there were people in the hallways of Xerox in tears because they were afraid of what would happen because of competition. Well, competition brought new challenges. And frankly, it created an environment where people who knew how to manage scarce resources suddenly came into demand. That was me. I learned scarce resources management any place I'd been. And so my career at Xerox took hold, and I started to move up and move on. I moved to larger and larger responsibilities, starting out in HR, kind of as has been my path. I moved to larger and larger groups, and I moved to broader and broader assignments. I actually worked for a while in a place called Organization and Business Planning. At the time, Xerox had a very difficult internal organization, and we were basically internal consultants refereeing between all the division presidents about what was the right thing for the entire corporation. The main thing that I did as I worked there, and I had figured it out early, was I needed to become a business partner with my line clients. And that was the mark that I put on my organizations and I put on my own career in Xerox, was I expected human resources people to become full business partners. And by full business partners, what I mean is not just talking about human resources stuff, but understanding the entire business, being the person that they would go to for business advice if they need it. It was a tall order, but actually HR colleagues in Xerox really took to it. And we really moved forward and had a great time, and things happened. I became known as a businessman who happened to make his living in human resources, as opposed to a human resource professional looking for a place to work. And that's really a critical point I want you to think about as we ask you to consider about what you're doing in the consulting business. The point I want to make is I took those initial principles from RCA of learn the business, and the principles you've been hearing in a number of these lessons of look to grow, look for new opportunities, and I applied that to the path that I took. So as you can see, Rob and I were both doing similar things, learning as fast as we could learn, not being afraid to tackle new things, being willing to take risk. And so then after AST research, Rob and I hook up. And all this brings me to then the development lesson number 8. You can guess what it is. It's be a business person first. No matter what your area of expertise, no matter what your specialty is, the better you understand your client's full business issues, the more valuable you will be to them and to yourself. And do not underestimate how much this will differentiate you from your competition. Most people are out there looking for a very unique thing that they can be specialists in. And if you can become a person who really understands your client's business, know what makes it tick, and help them figure out how to make it work, you'll become extremely valuable. Again, lesson number 8, be a business person first. Now we're going to want you to put these lessons into practice, and we want you to work on defining or expanding your niche, and we want you to be able to do this by focusing on 4 lists that will be helpful to you. The first list I want you to work on is I want you to write down all the things you really love to do. Don't worry about whether it's practical or not. Don't worry about whether anybody else agrees. This is you driving down on the issues that you love the most. When you're doing things that you love, time goes quickly, and work doesn't even feel like work. I once had a subordinate who, after focusing on his absolute love for youth coaching, changed his career path from managing large functions to becoming an internal quality coach. And he was never happier. So that's the first list. Write down all the things you love to do. We want you to physically make the list. The second list, this one may be easier, but it's in a very different direction. Put down the stuff you hate. What drives you crazy? What is really hard for you to get through? What is not enjoyable? What makes time drag? You can add to the adjectives that I'm using, but I want you to actually write down all the stuff that you really, really dislike. Now we have a third helpful list. The third helpful list is I want you to put down everything that you and those around you think that you're really good at. So this list will have 2 flavors to it. One will be what you believe, and the other will be what others believe you're really good at. And you may not even agree with all of the things that other people tell you, but I want everything down there that you and others think you're really good at. The first 3 lists are generally pretty easy to do because they're just kind of cataloging things that you really have in your brain. The 4th list is going to take some more work, but it's a critical effort for you to take on. For the 4th list, we'd like you to put down the various business or organizational problems that you can solve or that you can help solve. Think specifically about benefits that clients can gain because you'll be involved.
It's hard to say exactly how it'll come out, but I bet if you're really honest with yourself and look hard, you're going to find connections between those 4 lists that will really guide your decision making about the right niche for you. And what you're looking for is this. Establish a niche at the intersection of areas where you have deep expertise, you really enjoy the work, and that solve a real business problem. And don't cheat on any of those areas. I think it's really important to have that intersection because that's where you're going to have the most passion and the most pop and value for your client. But here's a caution. Pay close attention to that second list, things you don't like to do. If you fall into a trap of being good at stuff and selling yourself into areas that you just don't enjoy, it can be really uncomfortable for you. Back in my days at Mercer, I had a colleague there, really smart guy, hated what he was doing. And no matter how much he might have tried to hide it, it came through to his clients. The passion wasn't there, the interest level wasn't there, and the dynamic between him and his clients simply wasn't good. And he had many more problems than he needed to have. His business development efforts weren't very effective because his heart wasn't really in it. And you just don't want to fall into that trap. So be honest with yourself. If you don't like doing it, don't build a business around it.
Okay, we're almost done. A bit more on your niche development. Inevitably, the question is going to come up about whether you should target an industry or not and be an industry specialist. Conventional wisdom says you should do that. Can you guess what Consult from Strength is going to say? You're right. We want you to zig when everybody else zags, or maybe it's zag when everybody else zigs. But the answer is no, we don't think you should pick an industry to target and become specialized in that. We don't want you to get hung up on industry. We suggest you don't do that. And the reason why is that more than anything, executives value breadth. They value wisdom. They value new perspective. They value being able to see a problem differently than they and all their people see it. That's not industry specific. They don't expect you to be experts in their technology. So that allows you to just use great business sense, use your experience, your diversity, and bring a new idea to the fore. There are plenty of experts, both inside and outside the company. I've heard CEOs say experts are a dime a dozen. I don't need experts. And it's true. But what they really want is that fresh perspective. So you'll need some diversity of experience. You'll need some diversity of thinking. You'll need to, the proverbial get yourself out of that box. Think outside the box. It's actually true. It's what you need to do. And we think that diversity becomes a way for you to differentiate. That breadth becomes a way for you to differentiate. Now it gets a little tricky because we think it's okay to target an industry for an opportunity. And we've done that. And we continue to do that. So we're talking about industry specialization versus industry targeting. What we're talking about for us is we've targeted healthcare. And more specifically inside healthcare, we've targeted hospitals. Why did we do that? Number one, hospitals have lots of problems. Number two, we found out, in talking with them and working with hospital clients, that our approach seems to click pretty well with senior management teams and CEOs of hospitals. It's actually recession resistant. They're having difficulties, and Medicare payments are always going down, but insurance payments and Medicare payments don't go away when there's a recession. So it's a much smoother revenue flow. So we targeted healthcare and hospitals in particular. And they've become a very big part of our business, and some of our largest clients have become hospitals. Once again, even though over time we've become pretty smart about healthcare and hospitals, we still don't sell ourselves as industry specialists. We can hold our own with the industry specialists, but we sell ourselves as having broad, diverse experience, unique ways to look at problems and solve them in ways that specialists don't solve them, in the way that specialists don't look at them, and the way that specialists don't think about them. So we'd like to challenge you to think about it that way. It's absolutely okay for you to target an industry if there's an opportunity. We just don't want you to narrow yourself down to only being an expert for that industry. In the end, we think that your breadth is a much better differentiator than being an expert in one place. So we really want you to take advantage of the lessons that we've given you. We've laid out 8 of them. If you pay attention to these lessons and think about them deeply, it's going to help you move forward to decide where you should focus your consulting business. I want you to pay special attention to those 4 lists. Things you love, things you hate, things that other people think you love. It's that you'll remember them. And you go back and look at them again. It is really important to do that work well. If you'll work with those lists, you will discover a niche that can be your own. And there's no reason why you can't be the strong player using some of the techniques we've talked about that stands out, that's different than all the rest. Your competition will be then finding ways to try to catch up with you. So let's review the 8 lessons. Lesson number 1. Look at your experiences, even the seemingly bad ones, and then look at it with an eye for the expertise that can help a client solve a problem. Lesson number 2. Never stop looking for ways to leverage your expertise to have an impact on the broader range of your client's business. Lesson number 3. Look to combine multiple areas of your expertise that together can solve related, multifaceted, and complicated problems for your client. Lesson number 4. Don't be afraid to reach out to people who have the expertise that you want to acquire. Never stop learning. Make a commitment to be a lifetime learner.
Lesson number 5, look for ways to solve your client's most difficult problems. Don't shy away. Go after the tough stuff. They don't know what to do and you can really help them. Lesson number 6, all in caps, keep an open mind. Keep on learning. Consultants, in my experience, close their minds too often and too fast. Lesson number 7, seek change and take some risk. You can make this work. Lesson number 8, be a business person first. No matter your niche, get inside that business and really understand it. Well, Rich and I trust that you enjoyed the video and that the techniques and perspectives that we share with you are going to be useful to you as you position yourself to really get the most out of what you're doing in your consulting or freelance career. Some people might argue with you or argue with us about how important positioning is. And the common wisdom in consulting or freelancing is whatever somebody's willing to pay for, we'll get it. I was talking to a friend the other day who was a consultant as well with another big firm, and he said, hey, anymore, if it moves and writes checks, we'll work with them. And he wasn't saying that as a good thing. I think if you really discipline yourself with these perspectives and these tools about how to position yourself, you're going to get a lot more out of your work, a lot more out of your career, and really establish the freedom that you're looking for and the reason you're in this line of work to begin with. So we wish you all the best of success out there, and thank you for watching, and we'll see you down the road.